All right, starting off another project here. I actually need to do this one before I can finish the next one. I'm going to build a router sled. I'm not going to get this done today because my hardware store didn't have enough screws. But starting off with linear guide rails from Vevor. These aren't the greatest quality. I'll be the first to admit it. Like, some of these work great. This one flows really smooth, really smooth, really smooth. Look at this one. Not that good, but it will still work. So what I'm doing is, it took a while to match up the screws, but to mount the first set of rails to the blocks on the second set, you need these. Number 10, 32 by ½ inch. If you wanted, you could drill 2 additional holes. I don't plan to because this is going to get taken down every time I'm not using it. Then I picked up 4 bags of 1 inch to actually mount the sled to the top after I build that. And I'm going to cut some plywood. I have a 6-foot strip right here. I'm going to cut 2 3-inch strips off that to mount the lower rails too, which will give it some more clearance. As you can see now, there's less than 2 inches of clearance top to bottom, so I want to give it a little more. And I'm going to pop the plate off the plunge base for my router so I can determine where to drill. This also, fortunately, takes the same size screws. I ran Home Depot out of them, so I've got to go back probably tomorrow or to a different one and get 4 or 5 more bags so I can mount this thing to it. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I've always wanted a decent router sled, so I didn't really want to build one out of wood or anything like that. Yeah, they get the job done, but this will be easy. With a 3-inch base on the bottom, I can just use clamps to secure it down, then take it down and still have my full workbench after. So this is going to be fun. It's freezing out here right now. I've had this heat running for an hour and it's still not warm. So I don't know if I'm actually going to finish this today or how far I'm going to get today. But I do want to get these bolted down to the blocks, and I may start on the sled. All I have is 3/4 inch plywood. I would really rather use ½ inch for it. But yeah, I'm going to keep going. I'll get this all bolted down, show you how free it moves and all that good stuff. All right, screwed down both sides, so let's see how it moves. All right, so far so good. Now I gotta cut some strips to lift these up a little bit, then focus on building an actual carriage for the plunge base. So I guess I'll break out the table saw. May actually just do that tomorrow. It's freezing out here. All right, we are back. Got this piece of plywood here that I'm cutting 2 3.5 inch strips out of that I'm going to lay under the rails. And then I figure I can cut some pieces off of it to make my my carriage for the plunge base. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this up and do that real quick. Shouldn't take too long, but I'll just set you down over here. It is freezing out here, by the way. I hate cutting wood that long because I don't have anything for it to feed out onto. But this will work. Gonna lay these right underneath these rails and just screw them down. That'll give me an extra 3/4 of an inch of clearance. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the other side, but that was the goal. All right, both of those strips are cut. And I think these will work pretty well for this application. But just put one under each rail, and then I have plenty left to make a decent carriage out of. I'll probably make those cuts on the miter saw over here, but should work out pretty well, I think, hopefully. This is interesting. This is how much of the wood was in the sun. It's like it got darker. Hey, whatever. I'm liking it. All right, I got it screwed down to my risers. The reason I went this wide with it is just so I can clamp this down to my bench. I don't want it permanently affixed. I want to be able to remove it and use my entire bench when I feel like it. Overall, not bad. I'll be able to just put them up on my lumber storage, and I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. It should work out pretty well. So all that's really left is to build a carriage to hold the plunge base. And the extra 3/4 of an inch height really helped out a lot. A lot of people are probably wondering why I didn't just use a 2x4 or something along those lines. Well, 2x4's twist. When was the last time you saw a really straight one? Plywood is much more stable. So yeah, this should work out pretty well for me. Should work. All right, so I've got all of the plywood cut, and my router is just kind of set in place, roughly where it's going to be when we're operating this thing. I think I will probably use CA glue to seal it together, and then once that hardens, I can run some screws through it. CA glue just to, keep it in place. I know it's not really strong enough. But yeah, so far so good. I think we're gonna be okay. I do have some hole saw bits, so I can put a 2-inch hole through the center here, and so I can run my bits up through it. But yes, I am aware wood glue would be stronger, but I'm screwing it anyways. Once this hardens up, it'll have probably 3 screws going through each side, so it should be plenty strong. And I don't want to wait for it to dry. There we go. I only really need to give that about 20 minutes before I wind some screws through it. These screws are very much overkill for this, but it's what I have. Worked. Not going anywhere now. Nice and solid, 2 screws on each side. It's definitely not going anywhere. I've got to do the same with the top, but I got to glue those pieces on first. But before I do that, I need to try to match these holes to them. I'm really only going 2 screws in each one because I want it to be easy to take apart, and because they only had 8 left at the store that actually fit. So I still haven't really figured out how I'm going to do that. I may do the tape thing I mentioned earlier. We'll see. All right, got the holes drilled. What I did was I just set the carriage slides where I wanted them and poked a hole in the screw holes, and then I just moved the tape to the wood. It just kind of went with it. So I'm just doing a test fit now. Looks like these screws are going to be long enough, but not by much. But should be enough to bite on there pretty well. Then once I get those on there, I can kind of fit the sled in between it and hopefully just lift it up to where I want it and screw it together. But we'll see. That's a little ways away. All right, I got this thing in glue. I actually ran out of CA glue, so I had to use some Gorilla Grip glue. So you can kind of see it coming out a little bit there, but this side is CA glue. And I just put a clamp on each side too. About 10 minutes, I'll take those off and I'll make sure it still slides back and forth freely. And then if it does, it's onto the hole saw, and then I'll take the plastic piece off the bottom of the router and I can drill some holes to actually mount the router to it. So got it secured down onto the carriage. I took the plastic plate off the bottom and just put 2 small wood screws through it. I'll probably just keep this base right on this carriage anyways. Moves pretty good. I've got the depth about where I want it to make my first pass on this. I don't know if you can see, but it's just gonna skim a little bit off. So I guess moment of truth, I'll plug this into an extension cord and give it a try. We'll see. All right, here goes nothing. So first pass, and forgive me, this is my first time using it. It did cut deep enough, but I missed a little spot right here. But that, I think, is actually going to work pretty well. I'm taking about 1/8 of an inch off a pass. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this whole thing.